saw it coming. That morning she was dressed sharp, voice ready, the lights of the studio warm on her face. She knew the questions they'd ask, the usual back and forth, the debates she could win in her sleep. The audience was polite but buzzing, some there to cheer her, some waiting for her to slip up. She leaned back in her chair, a practiced smile on her face, the confident woman everyone expects her to be. Then the host shifted in her seat, reached under her desk, and pulled out a plain envelope. No fancy seal, no big title, just a name. Handwritten in blue ink, from Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso. A few people in the crowd exchanged puzzled looks. Candace raised an eyebrow, made a quick joke about surprise fan mail. She took the envelope anyway, her fingers brushing the rough paper. When she opened it, the crackle of the flap seemed too loud in the silent studio. Her eyes dropped to the first line. Something changed in her face. The audience leaned forward. This was no usual letter. There was no speech left in her mouth, just the sound of her heartbeat in her ears. Her eyes moved down the page, slowly at first, then quicker, then stopping. She cleared her throat, tried to laugh, but the words stuck. Ibrahim's message wasn't about politics or talking points. He wrote about a tiny village where radios are old and battered but still play her voice. He told stories of kids sitting under a tree, listening to her talk about courage and truth. It was supposed to be inspiring, but as she read on, Candace felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Doubt. He thanked her for her boldness, but then asked a question she didn't know how to answer. Does your voice lift all of us, or just the ones you choose? That line hit harder than any debate ever could. She tried to steady her hands, but they shook. She thought about her grandfather's words from years ago, how he'd tell her that truth means nothing if it forgets the people who need it most. In the studio, the air grew thick. The crew at the cameras didn't dare blink. One woman in the front row held her breath as Candace read more lines about children using her quotes to dream bigger, even if they didn't always understand the world she spoke from. She paused, tried to make a joke, but the words wouldn't come. The audience watched her armor fall apart piece by piece. She was fighting herself now, the old voice in her head that told her to stand strong no matter what, and the quiet echo from a distant place that asked her to stand soft too. When she turned the page, a photo slipped out and landed on her lap. She picked it up with fingers that didn't feel steady anymore. It showed a little boy barefoot on dry earth holding up a sign with her words scribbled in shaky letters. He was standing next to a blackboard propped against a tree trunk, half erased but full of hope. She flipped it over. On the back was his name, Emmanuel. Ibrahim's letter said that this boy heard her on an old radio powered by a broken battery and kept repeating her words to other kids. Then came a line that cracked her wide open. He believes you speak for him, but do you? Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. She held the paper closer to her chest, her voice barely a whisper. The cameras caught her lips saying it. I've never heard this before. The host reached for her hand but didn't say a word. Nobody clapped. Nobody knew what to say. The studio felt like it was holding its breath. Candace Owens, the woman who never breaks, was breaking not from an attack but from the kindness and challenge inside words that traveled across an ocean. She looked at the audience, her eyes searching for something. Maybe forgiveness, maybe just a moment to breathe. It was the first time her fans and critics saw the same thing, a real person, stripped down to her raw truth. And under the bright lights, for once, her silence spoke louder than her strongest speech. When the lights dimmed and the cameras turned off, she didn't rush out. She sat in that chair alone, the letter in her lap, the photo held so tight it almost crumpled. Back home that night, the envelope stayed on her kitchen table while the house stayed dark. She read it again and again, seeing not just words but memories. She thought about her own childhood, about being told to fight, to speak, to never let them see her cry. Now a boy she'd never met, under a tree she'd never seen, held up her voice like a flag. But maybe that flag didn't cover everyone she thought it did. The next morning, she looked at her phone, thousands of messages waiting. She opened her camera, no lights, no makeup, just her and the truth. She spoke to everyone and no one, about the letter, the boy, the question that tore her open. She didn't apologize for being tough. She didn't throw away what she believed. But she said, simple as the sunrise, I know my voice is strong. I hope now my heart can be strong enough to listen too. That clip spread even faster than the moment in the studio. People didn't share it to argue, they shared it because it felt human. Strangers sent videos back from classrooms in places she'd never set foot in. They held up signs that said, "We hear you. Do you hear us?" Donations poured in for Emmanuel's school, old radios replaced with new ones, blackboards with real classrooms. And somewhere far away, Ibrahim smiled, knowing that sometimes the softest words break the hardest walls. Weeks later, Candace travelled to meet Ibrahim in person. No cameras this time, no bright set, just two people sitting under a tree like the one in Emmanuel's photo. They talked about walls and bridges, about what words can build when they're not used to tear down. When she came home, she framed the letter and the photo side by side on her desk, a reminder that the strongest voices aren't always the loudest ones, but the ones brave enough to hold someone else's truth. And if anyone ever asks her what broke her, she'll say it wasn't an argument or a debate. It was a little boy, a blackboard, and a stranger's letter that made her see herself for the first time all over again.